Hello and welcome. Before we begin, I invite you to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Find a cozy position, allow your body to settle, and if you can, dim the lights around you so the atmosphere feels calm and restful. I'd love to know more about you, so when you're able, please write in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these videos can travel, and I'm genuinely curious about the places and times where you join me. If you find this video soothing, please remember to like it and subscribe. That simple action helps the video reach others who might also need some rest tonight. My true wish is that you don't make it to the end of this video, because somewhere along the way, you drifted off into peaceful sleep. That would be the best outcome of all. And if there are other topics you'd like me to create future videos about, please feel free to suggest them in the comments. I want this space to be one where you feel listened to and cared for. Now, let's begin. You are listening now to the story of something so ancient, so constant, and so essential that without it, there would be no earth as you know it, no life, no you, no me. This is the story of water. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world as a quiet sphere suspended in space. Imagine looking down at it from far above, from the silence of the cosmos. From that great distance, one thing glows more brightly than anything else. Not fire, not mountains, but blue. Endless, shining blue. The surface of our planet is wrapped in it, reflecting the light of the sun. That blue shimmer is water. It covers more than 70% of our Earth's surface, filling vast oceans, circling the globe in ceaseless motion. It rises as clouds, it falls as rain, it drifts as mist, it freezes into glittering white caps at the poles. It is both soft and powerful, both humble and majestic. It is as ordinary as the glass you pour at your bedside, and as extraordinary as the glaciers that carve valleys into mountains. Water has been with us since the beginning. It is older than humanity, older than trees, older than the mountains themselves. The very rocks of Earth were shaped by it. Each droplet has been part of countless cycles, rising to the sky, falling to the ground, sinking into the soil, flowing to the sea over and over, for billions of years. When you touch water, you are touching time itself. Think of this. The water you drink today may once have fallen as rain upon a dinosaur's back, or swirled in the belly of a great prehistoric ocean, or rested as ice in a glacier, thousands of years before the first cities were built. The water of this world never disappears. It only changes form, and in that way, it is eternal. Listen closely now, and you might notice that water has its own voices. The roar of an ocean wave, the trickle of a mountain stream, the soft rhythm of raindrops tapping at a window. Each sound is its own language, a language of movement, of flow, of change. Scientists can describe it in equations and charts, but still, when you listen to water, there is always something mysterious left unsaid, something that feels like memory. And water is not only around us, it is within us. More than half of your body is made of it. It runs through your veins as blood. It fills your cells. It cushions your joints. You carry with you a little ocean inside, a reminder of the seas where the first forms of life began. You are, in many ways, a walking tide, ebbing and flowing with the same element that once covered a newborn earth. Now picture a village at dawn, before anyone stirs. The mist hovers just above the ground, curling in soft ribbons. Dew beads rest on the grass, each one catching the faintest glint of sunlight. That is water, too humble, quiet, unnoticed by most, yet carrying the same history, the same age-old journey as the ocean. A single drop of dew holds the same story as the vast Pacific. This is the paradox of water. It is both vast and minute, infinite and fleeting. A droplet balanced on a leaf, fragile and trembling, contains the same mystery as the endless horizon of the sea. The ordinary cup in your hand is as extraordinary as a glacier, as a monsoon, as a thunderstorm rolling across continents. Water unites all living things. Every creature, every tree, every flower, every breath depends on it. It is not just the backdrop of life. It is the thread running through all of life. Without it, Earth would be silent and dry. With it, the world blooms and sings. And so, as we begin this story, let us pause to honor the truth. Water is not simply something you drink or something that falls from the sky. Water is the oldest companion of our planet, a traveler across time, a keeper of life. It is, in many ways, the eternal element. When you listen to the quiet rhythm of your breath, remember, each inhalation, each exhalation is supported by water. When you hear rain at night, remember, it is an echo of a cycle as old as Earth itself. And when you drink, remember, you are part of this story too. This is where our journey begins. With water, the element without which there is no story to tell at all. When you look at a glass of water, or at the shimmer of raindrops racing down a window, you may not realize that you are gazing at something that carries the memory of the universe itself. Water is not just ancient on Earth. It is cosmic. Its origins stretch back far, before our planet took shape, to the time when the stars themselves were first burning their fuel, scattering elements into the dark. So let us journey back, far back, to when there was no earth, no blue oceans, no forests, no clouds. Picture only space, vast, dark, endless, scattered with bright young stars. In the cool reaches between those stars, tiny grains of dust were coated with molecules of hydrogen and oxygen, two of the most abundant elements in the universe. When they came together, they formed water, in its simplest and most miraculous form. Much of it froze instantly, clinging to comets, asteroids, and drifting icy bodies wandering the early solar system. Some scientists believe that Earth's water came, in part, from these frozen travelers. Imagine, if you will, enormous icy comets streaking across the newborn solar system, their long tails glimmering. Many of them collided with the hot, raw surface of our young Earth, which at that time was still a ball of molten rock. Each impact was violent. Flashes of fire, mountains forming and crumbling, great oceans of lava bubbling. And yet, within those collisions, Tiny gifts of ice and frozen vapor were delivered, drop by drop, grain by grain. Slowly, over countless impacts and millions of years, water seeded this rocky world. But that is only part of the story. Water also rose up from within Earth itself. In those earliest ages, volcanoes erupted constantly, covering the surface in rivers of fire and clouds of ash. Along with the lava, gases escaped from deep within the planet's mantle: hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and steam. Imagine the air thick with smoke and vapor, the sky choked in darkness, the land a scarlet sea of fire. But as the earth slowly cooled, that steam condensed, falling back down as rain. And it did not just rain a little. It rained for centuries, for millennia, an endless deluge. Imagine storms so vast that lightning cracked across the whole horizon, clouds so dense that day and night blurred together. Imagine hearing the pounding of drops, not for hours or days, but for thousands upon thousands of years. That water pooled in the lowest parts of the Earth's surface, collecting, merging, spreading until, at last, the first oceans were born. The Earth that had once glowed red with fire became veiled in blue. The craters left by impacts filled with water. Valleys carved by lava became riverbeds. Entire basins were drowned in waves. Slowly, the cycle of evaporation, condensation, and rainfall established itself. The planet, once dry and harsh, was transformed into something soft, something alive. Close your eyes and try to see it. Steam hissing up from still cooling rocks, mingling with heavy black clouds, and falling back down as rain. Rivers cutting their first paths into mountains of stone. Oceans forming like mirrors across the globe, reflecting the light of the sun. From space, the Earth, once dark and glowing with lava, began to shine with the first shimmering blue. And here is where water's true artistry began. The oceans were not only mirrors, they were sculptors. Every drop of rain striking stone carved it down, grain by grain. Every tide pulling against cliffs wore them smooth. Rivers braided across plains, carrying silt, shaping valleys, digging canyons. Over millions of years, the Earth's surface, which had been sharp and jagged, was reshaped by water into something softer, more balanced, more alive. Imagine standing at the edge of one of those first oceans. The air still heavy with sulfur and smoke, the land still steaming, the waves crashing for the very first time. There are no trees yet, no birds, no grasses, only rock, water, and sky. And yet, in that moment, something has begun. A stage has been set. A cradle has been prepared. For it is within these oceans, within these waters born of fire and ice, that life will someday take its first breath. But for now, let us stay in this ancient time. Before the first cells, before the first plants, before the first animals, the world is silent, except for the rumble of volcanoes and the crash of waves. The oceans stretch vast and empty, reflecting the faint light of the young sun. Clouds drift, rains fall, and the cycle repeats endlessly, tirelessly, patiently. This was the Earth's baptism. Fire met ice, heat met cold, and from their meeting came water, Oceans spread, rivers ran, rain fell, glaciers formed. Slowly, slowly, this restless element took hold of the world. It was not gentle, but it was persistent. And in that persistence, water became the author of Earth's landscapes, the architect of valleys, the painter of coastlines. Think of it. Every curve of a river, every canyon, every smooth stone you hold in your hand has been touched by this origin story. Every coastline you see on a map is the signature of water's hand. The soft blue veil that we now take for granted was once unthinkable, a miracle born from the violence of creation itself. So when you drink a glass of water, you are not only drinking the substance that keeps you alive, you are tasting the collision of comets, the sigh of volcanoes, the endless rains that fell on a cooling earth. You are tasting the origin of oceans, the shaping of mountains, the whispers of a planet coming alive. This is where water began. In ice, in fire, in storms that lasted for ages, in cosmic dust, in volcanic breath, in clouds that never stopped. From these origins came the oceans, and from the oceans, all life would one day emerge. Water is never still for long, even when it appears calm. A pond mirroring the sky, or a glass of water resting on a table. It is part of a cycle so vast and ancient that it has been repeating for billions of years. This cycle, called the water cycle or the hydrological cycle, is the hidden engine that keeps our planet alive. It is both ordinary and miraculous. Every droplet we drink, every raindrop that splashes on our skin, every snowflake that lands upon the earth is part of a journey that began long before us and will continue long after. Imagine for a moment lifting a glass of water to your lips. It seems so simple, so ordinary, yet the water inside could contain molecules that once fell as rain on the backs of dinosaurs, that froze into ice on the peaks of ancient mountains, that flowed through the roots of the first forests, or that once drifted in a cloud above an ocean long vanished. Each sip is history and memory. The cycle ensures that no water is truly lost. It only changes form, wandering endlessly through sky, land, and sea. The journey begins, most often, with the sun. Solar energy strikes the surface of oceans, lakes, and rivers, warming them until some of the liquid molecules at the surface gain enough energy to escape. These molecules rise into the air as invisible vapor. This process is called evaporation, and it is one of the most powerful acts on Earth. Oceans, which cover over 70% of the planet, supply almost all of the water vapor in our atmosphere. Yet water does not evaporate only from oceans. It lifts from damp soil after a rainstorm, from puddles drying in the sun, and from the skin of leaves and grasses. This last process has a name of its own: transpiration. Plants, in their daily breath, release water vapor through tiny pores in their leaves, adding their voices to the atmosphere's rising chorus. Together, evaporation and transpiration form what scientists call evapotranspiration, the grand release of water from Earth's surfaces into the air. If you stand outside on a warm day and breathe deeply, You may even notice a trace of it, the faint, earthy scent after a summer shower when vapor rises from wet ground. That smell, called petrichor, is a reminder that water is constantly leaving the ground, reaching upward to continue its eternal cycle. Water vapor, though invisible, does not wander aimlessly. As it rises higher into the sky, it meets cooler layers of the atmosphere. Molecules begin to slow, clustering together, attaching themselves to tiny dust particles or grains of salt carried aloft by the wind. These invisible gatherings become the seeds of clouds. This stage is condensation, a transformation from vapor back into liquid droplets or, in colder air, into crystals of ice. Slowly, gently, billions upon billions of these droplets collect, forming the clouds that drift above us. Clouds are not uniform. They are storytellers in the sky. Wispy cirrus clouds whisper of high, cold altitudes. Towering cumulonimbus clouds, vast and dramatic, hint at approaching storms. Gentle stratus layers spread like blankets across the horizon. Each of these forms is simply water, gathered in different shapes, carried by winds across continents and oceans. If you pause to watch the sky, you are witnessing one of the great miracles of the planet, the transformation of invisible vapor into something visible and tangible, a visible signal that water is preparing for the next step in its journey. But clouds cannot hold water forever. As droplets collide and grow heavier, gravity pulls them down. The sky darkens, thunder rumbles, or perhaps only silence accompanies the fall. Water descends again as precipitation. Rain, snow, hail, or sleet, depending on the temperature and conditions. Consider snow for a moment, the most delicate form of precipitation. Each flake is a crystal of frozen water vapor, shaped by the air it passes through, no two alike. To think that these intricate structures fall by the billions across winter landscapes is to realize how creative and abundant the water cycle truly is. Rain, meanwhile, carries water back to rivers, lakes, and oceans. Some raindrops seep quietly into soil, trickling down to replenish underground aquifers, hidden reserves that store freshwater for centuries. Others race down hillsides, carving gullies, shaping valleys, feeding streams that swell into rivers and rush back to the sea. Every drop finds its path. Every drop returns. This final stage of the cycle is collection. Oceans, rivers, lakes, groundwater, glaciers, all are storage places for water as it pauses in one form before continuing its endless circuit. Collection is the balance of the system. Without it, Earth's surface would be barren. Glaciers, for example, are vast frozen reservoirs, holding nearly 70% of the planet's freshwater. Though they seem still, they are part of the cycle too. They slowly release meltwater into rivers and seas, especially in warmer seasons, contributing to the rhythm of life downstream. Oceans, the ultimate collection points, hold not just water, but memory. Waves crash endlessly, but the molecules remain, waiting for the sun's heat to lift them once more, beginning the journey anew. What makes the water cycle extraordinary is its permanence. Long before humans walked the earth, long before forests rose or deserts spread, the cycle already turned. It will continue long after us. Scientists estimate that a single droplet of water may spend thousands of years in the ocean before it evaporates again. Once in the atmosphere, it might remain only a few days before falling back to Earth. Some water travels quickly. Some lingers for millennia. But nothing is ever wasted. This constancy carries a profound truth. The water we use today is the same water that has always been here. The same molecules that once surged through ancient rivers or filled primordial seas are now in our bodies, our rivers, our skies. Every sip, every rainfall is a reunion with Earth's own history. And so, we might think of water not just as a resource, but as memory itself. Every drop is a traveler, bearing witness to ages past. To touch water is to touch time, to connect with all who came before. The water cycle reminds us of unity between air and sea, between mountain and plain, between the living and the long dead. For water knows no boundaries. It crosses borders, erases separations, ties all creatures and lands together in a single endless journey. When you stand in the rain, when you watch a stream winding through the forest, when you hear the ocean roaring against the shore, remember, you are witnessing a story billions of years in the making. A story that repeats again and again, endlessly, yet always new. This is the great journey of water, the most patient traveler of them all. Water is not only the sculptor of landscapes and the shaper of climates, it is the very foundation of life itself. If Earth is called the blue planet, it is not only because of its oceans, but because those oceans, lakes, rivers, and even droplets inside living cells sustain every creature that has ever breathed, grown, or moved across its surface. Without water, the earth would be a barren rock, silent and lifeless. With water, it is a flourishing garden. At the heart of biology lies a remarkable truth. Water is the universal solvent. This means it can dissolve more substances than any other liquid. Within a living cell, water dissolves salts, sugars, proteins, and countless other molecules, carrying them from place to place. In this way, water acts not merely as a background substance, but as the stage on which all the dramas of life unfold. Think of the human body. We are, in many ways, walking vessels of water. Roughly 60% of our bodies is water. Our blood is more than 80% water, ferrying oxygen from our lungs to our cells, carrying waste away to be expelled, and delivering nutrients absorbed from food. Our very brains, the seat of thought, memory, and imagination, float within a watery cushion and depend on water to conduct the delicate signals of nerves. Without the flow of water, our organs would wither, our cells collapse, and thought itself would cease. Scientists believe that life itself began in water. Billions of years ago, before continents had settled into their present shapes, the oceans were already teeming with possibility. Within their salty depths, simple molecules collided, combined, and eventually formed the first living cells. These primitive forms of life used water not just as a home, but as a necessary ingredient in their very chemistry. Even today, every living organism carries this ancient signature. Cells, whether in a leaf, a fish, or a human being, are essentially tiny sacs of water wrapped in delicate membranes. Inside, reactions powered by water build proteins, repair DNA, and generate energy. The blueprint of life itself, genetic code written in molecules like DNA and RNA, relies on water to hold its shape and function. In this way, water is not just a substance, it is the medium of existence. Consider plants, the silent architects of Earth's ecosystems. Without water, they cannot perform photosynthesis, the process by which they turn sunlight into food. Through their roots, plants draw water from the soil. This water ascends through stems and trunks, sometimes rising hundreds of feet in towering redwoods, pulled upward by the tug of evaporation at the leaves. Once in the leaves, water combines with carbon dioxide from the air and light from the sun to produce glucose, the fuel of life. Oxygen is released as a byproduct, the very oxygen that animals and humans breathe. In other words, every lungful of air we take is a gift of water's presence in the leaves of plants. Without water flowing through roots and leaves, there would be no forests, no grasslands, no food webs to sustain animals, and no breathable atmosphere for us. Animals, too, depend on water's flow. Fish carry it in their bloodstreams, using it to transport oxygen absorbed through gills. Amphibians absorb water directly through their skin. Birds, mammals, reptiles, all of them regulate body temperature with water, whether through sweating, panting, or the circulation of warm blood. In humans, water serves countless invisible functions. It lubricates joints, cushions organs, regulates temperature through perspiration, and delivers electrical impulses across nerve cells. When we thirst, it is the body's urgent reminder that without enough water, these processes begin to falter. Dehydration, Cloud's thought, weakens muscles, and if prolonged, brings the delicate machinery of life to a halt. Some organisms are so deeply tied to water that they are, in essence, made almost entirely of it. Take the jellyfish, for example. 95% of its body is water. It is a drifting, pulsing reminder of life's dependence on liquid. To hold the jellyfish in your hands is to feel almost nothing but the coolness of the sea itself, shaped into a fragile living form. Or consider amphibians like frogs, whose very life cycle tells water's story. Eggs laid in water, tadpoles swimming freely, and then the slow transformation into land-dwelling adults that never stray far from ponds or streams. These creatures carry the memory of their aquatic origins in their very bodies. Even we humans, despite our lives on land, cannot escape our oceanic heritage. The salt content of our blood is nearly identical to that of ancient seas. It is as though we carry a piece of the ocean within us, a reminder of where life began. Water also has the power to transform landscapes into bursts of life in an instant. Where dry sands and silent rocks stretch for miles, a single rainfall can awaken hidden seeds. Flowers bloom overnight, insects swarm, and animals emerge from burrows, all drawn by the sudden gift of moisture. These short-lived desert blooms remind us of water's role as life's spark. Without it, landscapes are barren. With it, they erupt in color and abundance. In polar regions, the melting of seasonal ice releases water into streams, feeding lichens, mosses, and hardy plants. Migratory birds time their journeys to coincide with these bursts of fertility, knowing that water is the key to survival. Even in the harshest environments, water brings the possibility of life. This connection between water and life is not only an earthly story. In the search for extraterrestrial life, scientists always look first for water. Mars, once home to ancient rivers and seas, is studied for signs of past habitability. The icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn, Europa and Enceladus, hold vast subsurface oceans beneath their frozen crusts, making them prime candidates for harboring living organisms. Wherever water flows, the possibility of life lingers. What emerges then is a profound recognition. Water is the unifying thread of all biology. From the tiniest bacterium to the largest whale, from the first single-celled organism to the human beings who now study the universe, water connects all living things. Every breath, every heartbeat, every leaf unfolding toward the sun depends on water's presence. We may speak of DNA as the code of life, but it is water that carries out that code, making it real. Without water, DNA is a dry blueprint with no architect to bring it into form. With water, it becomes a symphony of growth and renewal. In this way, Earth itself is alive because of water. Our planet hums with movement and color, a sharp contrast to the lifeless surfaces of Venus or Mercury. Oceans swirl, rivers carve, rain nourishes, clouds gather. All signs of a world that is not static, but breathing. Water does not simply support life. It animates the planet. And so, when we look at a drop of dew glistening on a blade of grass at dawn, or watch waves rolling endlessly toward the shore, we are not merely witnessing natural beauty. We are seeing the very substance that makes our existence possible. Water is not an accessory to life. It is life. Water is extraordinary, not only because it sustains life, but because it is endlessly adaptable. It slips into shapes and roles that few other substances can claim, wearing 1,000 faces, yet always remaining itself. It is the shapeshifter of Earth, appearing as solid ice, flowing liquid, or invisible vapor. In each form, it moves through the world differently, leaving behind marks of beauty, power, and transformation. When we picture water, most of us think first of liquid, the flowing stream, the still pond, the restless sea. In liquid form, water is Earth's bloodstream. It carries minerals down mountains, carves valleys over millennia, and nourishes roots deep in the soil. In rivers, it rushes forward with an urgency that shapes entire landscapes. In lakes, it rests in mirror-like silence, reflecting the skies above. Liquid water is endlessly patient. It wears away the hardest granite, drop by drop. It smooths stones into pebbles, pebbles into sand. Its sound, trickling, rushing, or crashing, is the music of the living planet. Without it, the earth would be frozen in stillness, barren of the fluid energy that makes it dynamic. But water is just as powerful in its frozen form. Ice transforms whole continents, not with speed, but with weight and endurance. Glaciers, those slow-moving rivers of ice, grind mountains into dust, dragging rocks for miles and gouging valleys in their path. The fjords of Norway, the Great Lakes of North America, the dramatic U-shaped valleys of the Alps, all carved by the patient hand of ice. Snow, too, is a miracle of design. Each snowflake is a tiny crystal of frozen water vapor, grown in the sky as it drifts downward, and no two snowflakes are exactly alike. Under a microscope, each reveals a hexagonal pattern, delicate and intricate, as though crafted by an unseen artist. Billions fall in every storm, and yet each one carries its own identity. In polar regions, vast sheets of ice lock away most of Earth's fresh water. Though silent, these frozen stores regulate global climate. They reflect sunlight, keeping the planet cool. When they melt, they raise sea levels, reshaping coastlines and altering human history. Ice, though seemingly still, is a force of planetary balance. Perhaps the most overlooked form of water is vapor. Invisible to the naked eye, it drifts in the air as humidity, shaping comfort and climate alike. When it gathers, we see clouds, billowing castles of vapor that drift across the sky. Some are wisps, like brushstrokes from a painter's hand. Others are towering thunderheads, brimming with electricity and potential. Mist and fog bring this vapor close to the ground, shrouding landscapes in mystery. A familiar hill becomes strange and magical when wrapped in fog. Valleys fill with low-lying clouds, creating rivers of white that move slowly across the land. Vapor softens edges, blurs the world, and reminds us that water is not always visible, but always present. And vapor does more than decorate the skies. It is central to the water cycle, rising from oceans, condensing into clouds, and falling back as rain or snow. Without this endless circulation, ecosystems would wither and rivers would dry. Invisible vapor is the messenger that carries water from one corner of the world to another. Of all water's forms, perhaps none inspires such wonder as the snowflake. Scientists know the reason for their six-sided symmetry. Water molecules lock together in hexagonal patterns when they freeze, but knowing does not erase the magic. Each crystal grows as it tumbles through the sky, shaping itself according to the temperature and humidity it passes through. The result is endless variety. Needles, stars, plates, dendrites with branching arms. Some are so delicate that they vanish the instant they touch warm skin. Others land softly on woolen sleeves, tiny works of art that exist for seconds before melting. Snowflakes remind us that even at the smallest scale, water finds infinite ways to express itself. One of water's strangest qualities lies in how it behaves when frozen. Most substances shrink when they turn solid, their molecules packing more tightly together. But water defies this rule. When it freezes, it expands. This is why ice floats. It is less dense than liquid water. This single property has shaped life on Earth in profound ways. If ice sank, lakes and oceans would freeze from the bottom up, trapping life beneath and perhaps extinguishing it altogether. Instead, ice forms a protective lid, insulating the water beneath and allowing fish and other creatures to survive even in the coldest winters. The expansion of ice also cracks rocks apart, driving the slow process of erosion. Water seeps into tiny crevices, freezes, expands, and splits stone open. Over centuries, this process helps form soil, carving landscapes and feeding ecosystems. From the smallest pebble to the grandest mountain range, water's expanding freeze has left its mark. The beauty of water is that it never stays in one form forever. Ice melts into liquid, liquid evaporates into vapor, vapor condenses into clouds, and snow falls once again. This eternal dance between states is part of the great rhythm of Earth. It is why mountains wear crowns of snow, why rivers run, why fog rolls through valleys, and why oceans breathe into the sky. We often think of solids, liquids, and gases as separate categories, but water blurs the lines. In glaciers, liquid trickles through frozen ice. In clouds, droplets hover between vapor and rain. On a snowy day, you may see flakes, mist, and melted drops all at once. Water reminds us that change is not an exception in nature. It is the rule. Because of its ability to take on so many forms, water is not bound to one role. It quenches thirst as liquid, protects and preserves as ice, and inspires dreams as mist. It sculpts continents, nourishes forests, and paints skies. Its transformations are not simply chemical, they are poetic. Each form has its beauty. The mirrored stillness of a lake, the blinding brilliance of a glacier, the delicate lace of a snowflake, the rolling billows of a cloud. Water wears countless faces, yet always whispers the same truth. It is the essence of life, the patient artist of earth, and the eternal traveler through air, land, and sea. When we look back at the story of humankind, water is the thread that weaves every chapter together. It is the silent architect of civilizations, the compass of migration, and the spark of culture. Wherever water flowed, humans gathered. Where it was scarce, we struggled, fought, and invented ways to capture and share it. To understand history, one must understand water. The world's earliest civilizations were river civilizations. The Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, the Indus in South Asia, the Yellow River in China. Each became a cradle of human progress. These rivers were not merely sources of drinking water. They were lifelines that made agriculture possible. Every flood brought silt and nutrients, turning deserts into fertile fields. Along the Nile, Egyptians learned to predict the annual flood and organize planting around it. They built canals and basins, creating an agricultural rhythm that sustained dynasties for thousands of years. The Nile was not only a river, it was a calendar, a god, and the axis of an empire. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates carved a land so fertile that it earned the name the cradle of civilization. Here, humans invented irrigation, digging channels and dikes to control the unpredictable floods. Wheat, barley, and dates flourished, and with them came cities, writing, and law. The first codes of justice were carved into stone, not far from irrigation ditches, reminding us that order in society often grew from the order of water. In the Indus Valley, another great civilization thrived on carefully engineered water systems. Archaeologists marvel at their advanced drainage, wells, and reservoirs, evidence that water management was central to daily life. The Yellow River in China, though prone to devastating floods, gave birth to dynasties that regarded it as both blessing and threat. China's sorrow, yet also China's lifeblood. Rivers were highways before there were roads. They carried boats heavy with grain, timber, spices, and silk. Great cities rose where waterways met the sea. Alexandria at the Nile Delta, Venice in its lagoons, Amsterdam along its canals. Control of water meant control of trade, and control of trade meant wealth and power. Empires expanded their reach, not just with armies, but with fleets. The Mediterranean became a liquid highway, carrying ideas, goods, and armies between continents. The Silk Road had a watery twin, the sea routes across the Indian Ocean, where monsoon winds drove ships between Arabia, India, and East Africa. Even inland, water remained a source of dominance. Whoever controlled the wells and oases of the desert controlled caravans and commerce. Whoever dammed the rivers could starve enemies downstream or nourish allies. In countless wars, rivers marked boundaries, and bridges became prizes of battle. To hold water was to hold life itself. The genius of ancient peoples lay not only in recognizing water's importance, but in finding ways to harness it. The Romans became masters of aqueducts, engineering stone arches that carried streams across valleys and into bustling cities. With these marvels, they built baths, fountains, and homes supplied with running water, luxuries that would not return to Europe until centuries later. Elsewhere, wells sank deep into the ground to reach hidden aquifers. Stepwells in India, descending with intricate carved staircases, provided both water and cool sanctuaries from the heat. In the Middle East, qanats, underground channels, carried water across deserts, proof that ingenuity could make even arid lands bloom. Fountains, meanwhile, became symbols of abundance. To hear water spilling from marble mouths in city squares was to hear civilization's triumph over thirst. Every splash was both practical refreshment and a declaration. Here, water is ours. Yet water is more than utility. It has always held meaning, sacred and symbolic. Across cultures, water represents purity, renewal, and the bridge between worlds. In ancient Egypt, the Nile was a god itself, Hapi, and its floods were seen as divine gifts. In Hinduism, the Ganges River is revered as sacred, capable of washing away sins. Pilgrims immerse themselves in its waters, not just to bathe, but to connect with eternity. In Christianity, baptism with water symbolizes rebirth and spiritual cleansing, marking a soul's passage into a new life. The Quran describes water as the origin of all living things. We made from water every living thing, a reminder of its divine essence. Indigenous traditions worldwide also honor water as a living spirit. The Lakota people speak of water is life, a phrase now echoed as a rallying cry in struggles to protect rivers and lakes from pollution. Myths, too, are soaked in water. Rivers were seen as borders between worlds. The Greek Styx separating the living from the dead. Lakes held mysterious spirits, from Celtic goddesses to Japanese dragons. Seas were both feared and worshipped, symbols of chaos and creation, danger and discovery. What unites all of these stories, from aqueduct to baptismal font, from sacred river to humble well, is the recognition that water is more than matter. It is meaning. It is not just flowing through pipes or rivers. It is the mirror of human need and imagination. Civilizations rose where water flowed, and they often fell when it disappeared. Droughts ended empires as surely as invasions. But as long as water was present, humanity flourished, growing crops, building temples, trading goods, and weaving myths. When we drink from a glass, wash our hands, or listen to rain on a roof, we are participating in the same ritual that shaped our ancestors' lives. We are heirs of the Nile farmers, the Roman engineers, the Hindu pilgrims, the desert nomads. All of them lived by the rhythm of water, and so do we. Water has always been the quiet backdrop of human history, but in the present age, it has stepped onto the stage as a central challenge of survival. The future of our species, and of countless others, depends on whether we can recognize water not as an endless gift, but as a finite treasure. Today, water is not guaranteed. It is threatened, scarce, and contested, yet still full of possibility. Imagine the world without clean water, not just the rivers and lakes we see, but the invisible systems that depend on it. The food we grow, the energy we produce, the health of our bodies. Water is woven into every breath and every bite. The World Health Organization reminds us that access to safe water is a fundamental human right, and yet millions live without it. In parts of Africa and Asia, children walk for hours to fetch water that is often contaminated. In developed nations, communities face crises too. Think of Flint, Michigan, where lead leached into pipes, or Cape Town, South Africa, which nearly ran dry in its infamous Day Zero drought. The future cannot be built on such fragile foundations. If water is unsafe, economies falter, health declines, and trust in governments crumbles. Without clean water, society cannot thrive. We live on a blue planet, yet less than 3% of Earth's water is fresh, and most of that is locked in ice. Only a tiny fraction is accessible to us, flowing in rivers and seeping through aquifers. But this small fraction is under immense strain. Population growth, industrialization, and climate change are stretching supplies thin. By 2050, Nearly half the world's population is projected to live in areas of severe water stress. Groundwater, hidden reserves beneath the soil, is being pumped faster than it can recharge. Rivers like the Colorado, the Yangtze, and the Ganges are strained by dams, pollution, and overuse. In some regions, great rivers no longer reach the sea. Deserts are expanding, rainfall patterns are shifting, and glaciers, the frozen reservoirs of humanity, are retreating. The Himalayas, sometimes called the third pole for their vast ice, are melting at alarming rates, threatening the water supply of billions across Asia. In the American West, the Colorado River Basin has shrunk, igniting fierce legal and political battles over rights to its dwindling flow. Wars of the future may not be fought over oil, but over water. Already, tensions rise along shared rivers like the Nile, where upstream dams spark disputes between nations. Water has become both lifeline and leverage, a scarce resource that can unite or divide. But scarcity is not the whole story. Humanity has always adapted, and new solutions emerge with urgency and creativity. Conservation is the first step, using less, wasting less, valuing more. Simple technologies, drip irrigation in fields, low-flow taps in homes, wastewater recycling in cities, can stretch every drop further. At the same time, innovation pushes boundaries. Desalination plants, once expensive and inefficient, now transform seawater into drinking water for millions in the Middle East. Atmospheric water generators harvest moisture from the air, offering promise in arid lands. Scientists study crops that require less water, and engineers design cities that capture rain instead of letting it vanish into drains. Equally important is the restoration of ecosystems. Wetlands, forests, and mangroves act as natural filters and sponges, holding and cleaning water for us. Protecting them is not an act of charity to nature. It is an investment in our own survival. No vision of water's future can ignore the oceans, which cover 70% of the planet. They are vast, yet vulnerable. Plastic pollution, oil spills, and chemical runoff poison marine life. Warming waters and acidification threaten coral reefs, which support countless species and protect coastlines. Overfishing disrupts the balance of food webs that have endured for millennia. But hope remains. Nations have begun to establish marine protected areas, underwater sanctuaries where ecosystems can recover. Technologies to clean up plastic waste are being tested in rivers and coastal zones. And growing awareness of the ocean's role in regulating climate and weather has inspired movements to safeguard it as a global commons. The ocean is not just a distant expanse. It is the beating heart of Earth's climate system. If it warms too much, storms intensify, sea levels rise, and coasts vanish. Protecting the ocean is protecting ourselves. What is needed most is not only technology, but a change of mind. For too long, water has been treated as cheap, infinite, and secondary. In truth, it is priceless, limited, and primary. Cultures that once revered rivers and rain offer wisdom for our future. To see water as sacred is not sentiment, but survival. If every drop is honored, it will be saved. If every river is valued, it will be defended. If every ocean is respected, it will endure. Education will play a vital role, teaching children to understand the water cycle, to see the link between a dripping faucet and a drying reservoir, between a plastic bottle and a choking sea turtle. These lessons shape future stewards. Policies must follow, ensuring water is distributed fairly, managed wisely, and preserved for generations unborn. The future of water is not yet written. It is a river with many channels, and we are standing at the fork. On one path, mismanagement leads to scarcity, conflict, and decline. On the other, wisdom leads to abundance, cooperation, and renewal. Signs of hope glimmer. Cities around the world are redesigning to be water smart, integrating green roofs, rain gardens, and recycling systems. Communities are reviving traditional methods, harvesting rainwater in India, restoring rice terraces in the Philippines, protecting sacred springs in Africa. Science and tradition, hand in hand, remind us that we are not helpless. Perhaps the greatest hope lies in the growing recognition that water is life. The phrase, once spoken only by farmers and fishermen, now echoes in international halls of power. Agreements, innovations, and movements all point toward a single truth. The survival of humanity depends on how we treat this clear, flowing substance. As we move into the future, let us see every glass of water not just as refreshment, but as history, as responsibility, as a gift. For in that glass lies the memory of oceans, the work of rivers, the breath of clouds, and the promise of tomorrow. Water has been our guide through this journey, from cosmic origins to rivers of history, from the cells of life to the fragile future we now face. And as we arrive at the end, perhaps the most important truth is not out there in glaciers or oceans, but within us. For water does not only surround us, it lives in us. Take a moment and think of your own body. More than half of you is water. It flows in your veins as blood. It cushions your eyes so you may see. It carries thoughts in your brain as electrical signals move across fluid pathways. Every heartbeat sends waves of water coursing through you, tides rising and falling with each breath. This is no small coincidence. The water inside you is the same water that once coursed through ancient seas. Every sip you take, every drop you hold, is older than humanity itself. The molecules of water in your body may have once swirled in the clouds above dinosaurs, or frozen in the glaciers that carved valleys long before the first city was built. You are not just connected to water, you are made of it. And so, when you listen to the rain outside your window, you are hearing an echo of yourself. When you stand beside a river and watch it slip away into the horizon, you are watching your own story continue on. When you drink a glass of water, you are partaking in a cycle so ancient, so enduring, that it binds you to every living thing on this planet. This is water's whisper, quiet, constant, eternal. It tells us that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply woven into it. It tells us that survival, beauty, memory, and renewal are carried in every drop. And it tells us that to care for water is to care for ourselves. So let us close with this thought. The next time you drink, the next time you listen to rain against the roof, the next time you see your breath rise like mist on a cold morning, pause for a moment. In that instant, you are touching the oldest story in the world, the story of water.